today's event is a webinar, not a Zoom meeting. So everyone's microphones are muted and everyone's video is off except for Steve and Dr. Merrill Matthews and myself. If you have a question for Steve, we do plan to do a Q&A at the end. So if you have a question for Steve, you can do that in two ways. You can either use the chat function down at the bottom of your menu screen to ask questions, or down under there, under the participants menu, you can raise your hand. And I'll see that you want to ask a question, and we'll be able to allow you to ask your question in person. And we'll try to get to as many questions as we possibly can. Before we start our program, I thought it would be appropriate to offer a toast to the confirmation of Justice Amy Coney Barrett, and to President Trump for keeping his most important promise to nominate judges in the originalist and textualist school in the spirit of Scalia. And so I'm in Texas, so I've got my Dr. Pepper here. And if you happen to have a beverage with you there at your computer, please join me in a toast to Amy Coney Barrett. Okay, now on with the program. Stephen Moore, who most of you probably know from his many different iterations and appearances on cable news shows. Steve has been a longtime friend of IPI and a longtime personal friend, and he's been a tremendous asset to the conservative free market movement in many, many different ways. I'll spin through a few of them. Steve worked in the Reagan administration. He worked both at the Cato Institute and the Heritage Foundation. Steve was the senior economist of Congress's Joint Economic Committee. Steve co-founded the Club for Growth. Steve served for many years on the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. Steve founded the Committee to Unleash Prosperity, which he still is working with today. They send out tremendous daily emails that I'm glad I'm on that mailing list. And Steve, you might tell folks how they can get on that mailing list as well. Steve has also been an economic advisor to innumerable political candidates over the years and presidential candidates. He was an advisor to Herman Cain, and he has been both a formal and informal advisor to first candidate and then President Trump. And Steve, in addition to all of that, look what I found. Remember that?
That's the book that made me. Yeah,
this is
we got to update that.
Yeah, we do. That's one of the very first projects I worked on when I came to work at IPI, was a little paperback book by Steve called Government, America's #1 Growth Industry. And when Republicans took over control of Congress in 1994, that was required reading. They all got copies, and Newt Gingrich and Dick Armey passed them out, required that all the new incoming members go through the book. And it was a great project and a lot of fun to work on. Steve, with that, I will turn things over to you. I know that our folks would love to hear your thoughts on where we are, the many accomplishments and promises kept of the Trump administration, and then sort of what's at stake a week from today. One of the most influential elections in our lifetime, 1 week from today. So if you're able to share your screen, that's great. If not, we're still interested in all your thoughts and what you have to share with us today. So take over.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, guys, for having me. I've always been a big advocate of IPI. I worked for Dick Armey, who was one of the founders of IPI, and he's always been one of my heroes. And Tom and Merrill Matthews have been heroes as well. And that book that you're looking at on Tom's screen, Government, America's #1 Growth Industry, that was one of the first little books I ever put together. And people still refer to it. And I'm one of my projects I wanted to do with IPI in 2021 is an update of that. Because when was that? 20 some years ago?
That was 1993.
Yeah. So
yeah.
That 25 years ago, something like that. So anyway, all right. Quick overview. I think that that first of all, I believe that the lockdown of our economy over the last 8-9 months has been one of the greatest catastrophes in our country's history. It was a massive mistake. That the evidence is now very clear that number one, lockdowns were not effective in terms of repelling this virus and keeping people safe. And two, they were huge impingements on our freedom and our liberties. And we've never seen anything quite like this. It's the first time in human history, I believe, that when we were faced with some kind of communicable disease, that we locked down healthy people rather than the people who were sick and vulnerable. And so I think it was a huge, huge mistake that will end up costing the economy, not just the economy, but also our social welfare over the next 25, 30 years. We've done lasting damage to our children. So I think it's been a horrendous mistake. And what really scares me, frankly, is I do believe if the Democrats win, and I think right now it's a toss up. I mean, I don't think any of us knows for sure what's going to happen on Tuesday. But if the Democrats win, they will lock down the economy again. That's what they like to do. The liberals like to take control of people's lives, and it will be increasingly catastrophic. I have, 2 kids at home right now that are 13 and 14 years old, and they haven't been in school for almost a year now. And it's done real damage to them. And by the way, they're downstairs, and I guarantee you, they're supposed to be doing online learning, and I guarantee you, if I go down there, they're going to be playing computer games. So kids are not, distance learning has not worked at all. And we've got one of my major messages for the last 8 months is get the damn schools open. Here we are in the end of October, and we still don't have schools open. It is really cataclysmic for our young kids in terms of their economic and social and educational development. So I'm going to see if I can get this thing to work one more time, because I do have some kind of interesting slides I'd like to show you all. If I can figure out how to do this. Can you see that?
Yeah, there it is.
Okay. So I call this a tale of two Americas. You can see that on the screen now? Tom?
Yes.
Okay. So let me just kind of go through this quickly, because like one of my major themes right now, I'm writing a big book, that'll be out next year called The Blue State Meltdown. And it's about the fact that, America is 2 countries right now. I mean, we're not the United States of America. We're the divided states of America. There is blue state America that has the plethora of liberal policies, and there are red states like Texas and Georgia and Florida and Utah and Idaho and Iowa and Nebraska that have used the red state model of limited government and keeping taxes relatively low and a light touch of regulation, not forced union policies. The left has done exactly the opposite. And so this has set up a really nice experiment, in terms of what works and what doesn't work. And this is what our founders had in mind. I think our founders were geniuses. They're not, I don't know if they were racist, but they were certainly geniuses in terms of the way they set up our government in a way that truly let our states be the laboratories of democracy. And one of the things that Donald Trump did very smartly, and this is something that we recommended from the start, is exactly the opposite of what the left wants to do. They want all these national mandates, national mask mandates, national lockdown mandates, this and that. No, we don't. We don't want national mandates. We want states to decide, a policy that is right for New York City is not necessarily and probably isn't right for Nebraska. And so when the left says, oh, we have to have a national mask mandate, why should people living in rural Nebraska have to wear a mask? I'm not even opining about whether masks are, effective or not. There's marginally they probably are, although I think the left has really overstated the case for masks. But the fact is that this is a country that is very divergent, geographically and in terms of how closely people live together and so on. And so the first thing I think is kind of interesting is just the death rates, and this is as of the chart you're looking at is as of the end of September, so it's a few weeks out of date, but not significantly out of date. You can see that the massive death rates were obviously in the blue states, in states like New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, which did an extraordinarily poor job of keeping their citizens safe. Incidentally, the big difference I think right now between where the left is and the right is in terms of containing the virus. This is the view of Scott Atlas, who's the president's healthcare advisor now. And this is something at least our group fully agrees with. Is the strategy is protect the vulnerable, and the other 80% of Americans should be able to get on with their life. So the vulnerable, as you all know, are people who are over the age of 70, people who are obese, overweight, and people who have other health problems like emphysema or diabetes or cancer or heart disease. They are vulnerable and they have problems that they need to quarantine themselves. But that doesn't mean the other 80% of Americans, especially those under the age of 40, where the risk is very close to zero. And for school age kids, they're much more likely to die in a bus, school bus accident than to die from coronavirus. So there's a real fear out there that is not rooted in any kind of reality. So you can see the blue states. Now, this is just comparing the blue states and the red states, the big ones, and you can see, again, New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts had really high rates. Arizona, Florida, Georgia were in the middle. California, is interesting. California has done a good job of. They're a blue state, but they've done a very good job of containing the virus. But on balance, if you live in a red state, you are much less likely to die from coronavirus than in a blue state. I'm going to move on a little bit. So this is looking at, the left loves to say, oh, Donald Trump is responsible for, 200,000 deaths and so on. No, the people responsible for the excess deaths are the blue state governors. So we estimate there would have been 30,000 less deaths if blue states had been as competent as red states in terms of dealing with the virus. And you can see, again, the same states that I was mentioning before are the ones that are, problematic. Okay, so let me just show you this. It's kind of interesting. Tighter lockdowns don't work. So what we did was divided the states into 5 categories, from the strictest lockdowns to the states that didn't lock down at all. There were about 8 or 10 states that didn't lock down at all, like Nebraska and South Dakota and so on. And you can see, if anything, the tighter the lockdown, the more deaths, not less deaths. Now, I'm not saying lockdowns cause deaths, but somebody show me a scintilla of evidence that shows lockdowns work. They just didn't. They didn't have, closing down businesses, closing down schools, closing down parks and playgrounds was a very bad decision. So the other thing that's going on, obviously, in America that's huge, is the migration patterns of people out of blue states to red states. It's accelerated dramatically during this pandemic. Florida is now gaining 1,000 people every day. The state of Texas is gaining 800 people a day. Tennessee is gaining 500 people a day. Arizona is gaining 500 people a day, and they're leaving the blue states. They're leaving Illinois, which is my home state. They're leaving Texas. They're losing New York. Even California is losing people. So, the blue state model doesn't work. And this is showing that the blue state model doesn't work. These are the most recent unemployment rate levels. And what's breaking my heart about this election is, look at the states that have the highest unemployment rates. Well, Hawaii, Nevada, California, Rhode Island, Illinois, New York, Massachusetts. What do those states have in common? They're blue states run by liberals. The states at the bottom, people don't realize there are about a dozen states that are not that have unemployment rates less than 6%, which is really pretty incredible. That means you're pretty close to full employment, and 11 of those 12 are red states. So I believe this election is about a very simple choice. Do you want America to look more like Texas and Florida, or do you want America to look like Illinois and Michigan and Massachusetts? Because their policies don't work and ours do work. And now, one of the things I was just doing the reason I was a couple of minutes late for this time, I was doing a Fox Business News interview, and Neil Cavuto asked me, well, wait a minute, are all these liberals moving to Texas and Florida and voting for Democrats? And, so far that hasn't been the case in most states, but we'll see. Tom, your job is to deliver Texas on election day. So,
thank you so much, Steve, for not putting any pressure on me whatsoever.
Exactly. But they've been saying for 30 years they're going to turn Texas blue. They really think they've got a chance this time, but I pray to God that doesn't happen. Because, by the way, how could the Texas, Tom, seriously, how could Texas even be close? The Democrats have basically told Americans, voters, what they're going to do. They're going to shut down the oil and gas industry. There are at least 1 million people in Texas employed in that industry. It would be like going to Nebraska and saying, we're going to stop people from growing corn. I can't even imagine that Texans would be so stupid as to vote for someone who's going to destroy one of their greatest industries. But maybe you can, can you explain that, Tom?
Well, all I'll say is that we have concerns about the phenomenon you described, which is people moving here from blue states, right, because they want more freedom, but then bringing their same voting patterns with them. And I don't think we've seen that happen yet, but it is something that we're all very concerned about.
Yeah.
Because after all, that's kind of what happened to Colorado.
Yes. So Colorado was a red state, then it turned purple, and it's turned blue because of migration from California. And so you're right, and maybe it's interesting now, by the way, if you move, I saw some signs in Florida now, in Jacksonville and stuff, when people drive, to Palm Beach and stuff, welcome to Florida, keep your liberal ideas out of the state. So maybe you need to build a wall in Texas or something. So let me just I'm going to end in a few minutes because I want to hear what you all have to say. What economics is all about incentives, right? I mean, incentives matter. They matter a lot. This is showing one of the idiot policies that Nancy Pelosi wanted to put in place. I think that Trump made a mistake in agreeing to this, but it was during the height of the crisis when he was just trying to get the money out the door. And so he agreed to these $600 a week unemployment benefits. And it turns out that under those that, by the way, that's a lot of people don't understand, that's on top of the normal benefits that people get. And so it turned out that according to the Congressional Budget Office, about 70 to 75% of workers were getting more money on unemployment benefits than they were when they were working. That's not a good idea. I don't think I have to convince anybody on this call that that's a pretty stupid idea. Although there are a lot of liberal economists, academic economists around the country who say that was a really good thing to do. It created jobs. I mean, this is the lunacy, folks, we're up against. Wait a minute, paying people more money not to work than to work creates jobs? Run that by me. Oh, they're going to spend the money and so on. The amazing thing actually was that anybody stayed on the job during that period, because we found that $600 a week, many workers were getting twice as much money. So they were just making a financially astute decision not to go back on the job. And finally, we press this point that it was really negative for people to be getting that kind of unemployment insurance. And Trump, I think, quite correctly held firm. And by the way, the reason there's no stimulus bill right now is Pelosi is continuing to insist on that. Now, what's the economic impact of that? We've been working with a guy named Casey Mulligan, who's one of the top labor economists in the country. He's at University of Chicago. And we played out 4 or 5 different scenarios. And you can see the green is if you do the payroll tax cut, which is one of the few times in my whole life I've disagreed with Tom Giovanetti. We were very much in favor of the payroll tax cut. It's not normally a good thing to do. We saw the payroll tax cut as if you're going to get money to people, if you're going to spend $2 trillion, then just get rid of the payroll tax for the year. It increases people's incomes and it reduces the cost for an employer to hire a worker. What's the point of collecting a tax and then giving it back to people? And it rewards work. The Democrats wanted to give people unemployment insurance, and our attitude is no, don't give money to people who aren't working, give money to people who are working. And so we found that to be we estimate that would have gained about 2.5 million jobs. And instead, they didn't do that. They ended up doing unemployment insurance. And you can see, again, if Trump had stayed with the unemployment insurance benefits at $600, we would not have had a recovery. Since my book is Government America's #1 growth industry, we never imagined, Tom, in our wildest dreams that a day like today would come where the government's close to spending, 40 to 50% of our GDP right now. I don't know if you're all aware of that because of all the money that's been spent. Who would have thought the day? I don't think that Bernie Sanders, who's an avowed socialist, would have, in his wildest dreams, thought there would be a day when we'd spend money. So you can see from this chart, what's been growing in the economy has been now this is through the second quarter of the year. The good news is, I'm not trying to depress people. The good news is that the economy is booming right now. It is absolutely booming. I mean, this is really an incredible situation where we have we're going to get a number on Thursday that is going to be, I was just on the phone with the White House folks today. They've got to do a full court press on this. We're going to get 33% GDP growth for the third quarter. That's double the previous record ever. It is a spectacular number. I mean, it blows everybody away. The Congressional Budget Office, the Federal Reserve Bank, every private Wall Street economist thought we'd be lucky if we got 16, 17% growth. We got 34%. The previous record was in 1950 when we had a quarter when we had 16% growth. So that's twice as high as we've ever had before. It's much, much higher than any of the European countries are having. Whatever Trump is doing, it is working, folks. And, my line is that, we're riding on the back of Secretariat. Now's not a good time to change horses. It makes absolutely no sense. you know, I just had to put this in there. This is the most outrageous claim that America is a systemically racist country. Simply look at the economic data. This shows people of color, people who are Asian, people are brown, people are red skin, people are black skin. And what you see here, these are the 2018 numbers. I mean, look at this, folks. I mean, look at Indian Americans, Taiwanese Americans, Asian Americans. By the way, that's the 2018 data. The 2019 data just came out. The average household income, the median household income of an Asian household today is $100,000 a year. That's incredible. $100,000? Sorry, did you want to say something, Tom?
No, I was just expressing amazement.
It is amazing. I mean, wait a minute, these are brown-skinned people. I thought we were discriminating against them. Brown-skinned people, Asians, have higher incomes than whites do. That doesn't sound too racist to me. And you can see, all these various groups, Koreans do better than whites do, Japanese do better, et cetera, et cetera. And then, African Americans do poorly. There's no question about it. By the way, the Hispanics have done really well. Hispanics saw really big gains under Trump. And so every income group, every ethnic group and racial group saw record income levels and record low poverty levels under Trump. So he is not a racist. At least his policies haven't been racist. They've been really good for. And then, that just shows you what's happened. Look at that. I mean, this is so amazing. I'm proud of this because I've played a role in the Trump economic agenda. Look at what happened to family household income. Look at that. In 3 years, household income went up by $6,400. That's a miracle. It's a miracle. I mean, it is such a testament to the benefits of the deregulation, the tax cuts. I mean, if you looked at that picture and you said, Democrats love to talk about science. We're going to follow the science. Okay. Well, we did an experiment. We did a scientific experiment. We cut tax rates on our businesses and on our corporations, and we cut taxes, marginal tax rates. And, we made a bet that this would help middle income workers because it would create, better, more capital coming into the United States. $1 trillion came in when we cut these rates, and we had the lowest poverty rate in the history of the United States, and we had the biggest income gains in 3 years in the history of the United States. And the Democrats want to repeal it. I mean, how stupid is that? Really, I mean, it is crazy. So maybe I'll just end there by saying, this is the election of our lifetimes. I think that if Joe Biden is elected president, I think we will have a Great Depression. I think I'll show you just one last chart. I think I have it in here. I might have passed it. Oh, here it is. Here it is, folks. There's the tax increases. So he wants to take the corporate tax from 21 to 28%. He wants to take the small business tax from 37 to 39%. He wants to take the income and payroll tax for wealthy people from 37 to 51. By the way, if you live in a high tax state, that brings your tax rate to about 60%. Capital gains would go from 24 to 40%. By the way, someone told me I'm wrong about this, that actually the capital gains rate goes up to about 42%. So that would be virtually a doubling of the capital gains tax. And then the death tax, people don't realize that he gets rid of the step up basis on capital gains, which is the biggest increase in death tax ever. So we're up against some formidable foes that would destroy our economy, and we better win. So I'll stop there.
Steve, a lot of conservatives, myself included, have been troubled by some aspects of Trump's, personality and things like that. But when you actually look at the accomplishments, when you look at the tax cut and the economic growth, when you look at the Supreme Court appointees, when you look at, you haven't talked at all about deregulation, but just the incredible successes in deregulation. I mean, he's the most successful conservative president in my lifetime. And if it weren't for COVID, you have to think he would be cruising to re-election.
So just one funny thing, I guess, I don't know if it's funny, but, I remember in January and early in 2020, and I was looking at this incredible, I mean, it really was Trump. I don't know if any of you saw the 60 Minutes interview, but Leslie Stahl was just, her behavior was despicable. And I've never seen anybody treat a president, so dishonorably. And anyway, she scoffed at everything Trump said. And he said, look, we created the best economy ever. And she said, oh, come on, that wasn't the best economy. Well, look, if you judge an economy by how well the middle class is doing and how the poorest among us is doing, then it was the best economy in the history of the United States. I mean, come on, every single racial and ethnic group had the lowest poverty rate. By the way, that means a smaller percentage of people were poor under Trump than any other time in the history of the United States. And the median income went up substantially, et cetera, et cetera. It really was the best economy ever. And I was thinking, God, everything's going so well. Seriously, Tom, I was like, okay, either meteor is going to hit us or we're going to have some kind of major terrorist event. Something is going to happen. And this is just too good. You know, the one thing I didn't expect was this pandemic.
Yeah.
But you know, it makes me, maybe God isn't a Republican, because you're right. If it had not been for the pandemic, Trump would have won a 40 state re-election landslide. But he's got to basically say, look, this economy is rocking and rolling, and you know, if Trump is reelected, 2021 is going to be a really, really good year. If he doesn't win, you know, it's going to be really bad.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me ask you, I've got a couple questions I want to ask, and then I'm going to let Meryl ask a couple questions.
Okay.
But let me invite folks again from our audience. You can also ask questions. You can do it through the Q&A function, or you can do it with the raise your hand function down on the participants menu. And we've got, I guess we have one question right now in the Q&A and no questions in the raise your hand feature. So you've got time to get your question in if you have one. So Steve, I want to ask you a couple of sort of specific policy questions. There's a lot of churn right now in this area of social media and the impact on conservatives, whether or not social media is biased against conservatives. You know us, and you know that at IPI, we're always going to be opposed to government regulations and things like that. But there are a lot of conservatives who are calling for antitrust to break up some of these companies. They're calling for regulation on speech and things like that. Do you have a take on that?
Yeah, you know, I do. I think, you know, the essence, you know, one of the defining moments of the progressive movement 100 years ago was the Sherman Antitrust Act, which was a big mistake. And I cringe when I see conservatives now saying we should use the Sherman Antitrust Act against Google and Facebook and, you know, all of these other Twitter and so on, Amazon. Do I like the politics of these companies? Hell no. But, you know, look, it's their platform. You know, they can do what they want. We have to. Nobody puts a gun to your head, Tom, and makes you use Google. Nobody. I don't have a Facebook account. You know, why would I have a Facebook account? I hate that company, but it's a free country. So I'm with you on this. And by the way, you know, I'm on the board of two technology companies. They're small startups. They're doing pretty well. The COVID has not helped, but you know, this is what's going to pay my retirement if these come through. They're both about, you know, market cap of $3 or $4 million, but they could be, you know, $50 million companies at some point. That's the free enterprise system. You know what we want, Tom? We want to be bought. We want Facebook or Google or Amazon to buy us, and that's, you know, so this idea that these big companies are destroying the entrepreneurship in America, just the opposite. Just the opposite. And the other thing is, look, you break up Google and you break up Facebook and you break up Amazon and these companies like that, you know, who benefits? Well, China does, the countries we compete with. China would love us to break up our technology companies. I mean, these are companies that now have, well, Apple has a $2 trillion market cap. Why is that a bad thing? Why is it a bad thing that Apple has every single one of us, every American virtually has their money at Apple stock. And one of the things you and I have advocated for, you know, as long as we've been in this game, and Meryl as well, has been to, you know, let everybody own money in the stock market through, you know, the Social Security system. I saw this article again. The left is on this rampage. Only, you know, 1% own 60% of the stock market. Well, that's because you won't let people invest in the stock market, right? I mean, we should have. I believe in owner capitalism. I think just think how much money people would be making if their Social Security money was put into the, you know, where you really democratize the stock market. But of course, the left is totally against that.
Okay, let me turn it over to Dr. Matthews. Dr. Matthews, do you have a question?
Steve, in the early days of the Trump administration, you were hopeful for 4% economic growth. And I think if I remember right, a couple of years ago when you were in Dallas speaking to our group, the numbers were going to come out the next day or two, and it looked like it was going to be real close to that 4%. But I don't think I think it hit high a couple of times, but I don't think we've been there. I think I saw the average being about 2.4% or 2.5 or 6% or something. What do you account for not hitting, and this is pre-COVID, the 4% rate as much as we had hoped?
Well, we got to 3% in 2019, which was something that Obama never did in 8 years. So the growth rates were strong. Good question. Why didn't we get to 4? Well, first of all, by the way, just Merrill, the left kept preaching, people like Robert Rubin and people at the Federal Reserve Board and who was Larry Summers and others basically said, what do they call it? Secular stagnation. That they basically apologized for Obama's failed policies by saying, the economy only grew 2%. That's the fastest we can grow. And we didn't get to 4, but we got to 3. And I think we would have gotten over 3 if it hadn't been for COVID this year. So policy does matter. We took over an economy that was growing at 1.5% in Obama's last year. Now, that was a really booming economy. Remember how great it was? I mean, the left is incredible the way they're rewriting history. They're acting like Obama was some kind of economic savior when Trump is exactly right. He gave us the worst recovery from recession ever. By the way, the people who predicted 4% growth were the Obama people. They predicted in 2009 and 10, 11, 12, and 13, we'd have 4% growth. And we got less than half of that. So, I think that I don't have a good answer for why we weren't able to get to 4. We did a lot of positive things. And, maybe it is a lack of labor force growth, Merrill. We had 6.5 almost between 6.5 and 7 million unfilled jobs in 2019. Think of that. By the way, you want an amazing statistic? Today, right now, as we sit here, there are 6.2 million unfilled jobs. And that is more unfilled jobs than any point in the entire Obama, Biden presidency. So think about it. Here we are at the tail end of a pandemic, a once-in-a-century pandemic that just flattened our economy, and we still have more unfilled jobs than we did under Obama Biden. So I think that's, but I still think with the right set of policies, with continued supply side policies, we could get to 4% growth. We're going to need a lot more immigrants if we're going to get there.
And what do you think about the trade policies now? It started out, China has changed over the years. 10, 15 years ago, China looked like it was going to be a country that was going to open up to markets more, be more free market. That has changed significantly under Xi as time has passed. But how are our trade policies, you think, going to change if Trump gets reelected? Are they going to sort of go the same direction? Or do you think he plans to change it? Or now the Democrats are sort of embracing the Trump plan on several things about being harder on China, trying to bring jobs back to America and so forth. There seem to be doing a Republican, or at least a Trump light version of trade policy.
Yeah. So, boy, that's a big question. I'll just answer it very shortly by saying, Trump recognizes, I think Trump deserves a lot of credit for recognizing China as the enemy that they are. They are an adversary. I believe China is Japan circa 1938. I think that's how dangerous China is in terms of their military buildup, their predatory trade practices. We saw what happened with, I do think this was the China virus. I don't know if it was incompetence or willfully, but they contaminated the whole world. And I'm a big believer they should pay major reparations. I think we should rip up $1 trillion of our bonds that we owe them and say, now we're even. By the way, nobody else likes that idea. But I just feel very strongly about China. They are an enemy. And I think, one of the things that really pains me about the prospects of Biden winning, and again, look, I think this is still, right. I'm with the betting markets. It's 60-40 right now. I put the odds at 60% Biden, 40% Trump. But if Biden wins, I never thought I would see say this, but if Biden wins and he does anything like he says he's going to do, China will take over as the world economic superpower. Will surrender that position for the first time in 75 years. And that pains me to say that because, you cut me, I bleed red, white, and blue. With the right policies, we can blow by them. But with these policies, I mean, really, it's a gift to China. If Biden wins, the biggest winners on the planet are President Xi and President, Putin. You don't think Putin wants to shut down our natural gas? I mean, then he's going to have a monopoly. I mean, how stupid are liberals? I mean, really, we for the first time in any of our lifetimes, we finally become energy independent. We're actually exporting our oil and gas. We finally have this amazing situation, and these idiots want to shut it down. I mean, and by the way, it's not like China is building. Every time we shut down a coal plant in the United States, China builds 10 coal plants. I mean, how in the world is that solving the global warming problem? I mean, the naive, I don't know if they're just naive or what, but I guarantee you China doesn't give two wits about climate change. All they care about is taking over the world, and we're playing right into their hands.
Steve, I want to ask you another a question, and then I think we'll go on.
I've got 5 minutes, and then I've got I have to have a flight I have to catch.
Okay, then I'm not going to ask you another question. I'm going to try to go to some of the questions from our audience. We have a question from Bob Hyde, our friend, who, by the way, is Henry Hyde's son.
Hi, Bob.
Bob wants to know the impact of Biden's policies on the charitable sector. He observes that it seems like Democrats don't give as much of their own money personally to charities as do Republicans, and he's concerned about what will happen to charitable giving and nonprofit organizations under Biden and progressive policies.
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I think if taxes go up, then people have an attitude of, I gave it the office kind of thing. So, I'd much rather have people, my big thing is like, what do rich people do with their money? I think, why would we want the government to take more of their money? What rich people do with their money is they basically reinvest it in their company, or they invest it in other companies. I mean, you're just stealing and robbing. What basically the Biden idea is like, we're going to have all these smart people and you're going to give us all your money, and we're going to have the smart people in Washington do the investing. And they're going to invest in things like solar power and windmills. And, they're going to pick winners and losers. Gee, that worked really well under Obama. Remember Solyndra and all these other failed things. So, I really worry about this idea that, government has all the solutions and they're the know-alls. And, I've talked to a lot of these great, I'm privileged to know billionaires, and they are great investors. They put their money into small businesses, and they plow a lot of their money back into the businesses they grew. And, they have a attitude that they can spend their money a lot more wisely than Washington can. And I think they're right.
We have a question from Carl. Carl observes that it seems like most voters, including undecided voters, seem to vote based on emotion rather than facts. And how do we as conservative and Republicans reach those voters? We have a tendency to rely on facts and data rather than emotions and feelings.
Well, boy, that's the question of our age. But I'm just going to say that, this election is pretty simple. If people vote on, Trump's performance, he's going to win. And if people vote on his personality, he's going to lose, because Americans don't like Trump. They don't like the way he acts. They don't, he did severe damage in that first debate. It was a really poor debate, and it hurt him a lot. Every Republican candidate around the country lost 4 points after that debate, and that was a big hole to dig us into. It was much better in the second debate. But look, if you're gonna vote for Joe Biden because you like him more, I think a lot of times these are popularity contests. But I'll say one last thing about this. The reason I think Trump still has a chance to win is I think 80% of undecided voters are going to go for Trump. If you haven't made up your mind right now, and you just don't, why, when the economy's doing well. Although the thing that really does worry me is this, this recurrence of the virus. I think that's scared a lot of people, and that may counteract some of the really positive news on the economy.
All right, let's take one last question from our friend Gary Short. Gary, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Thanks, Tom. For the audience, Tom was on the radio this morning on Mark Davis, and he made one of the best statements I've ever heard on the radio. I can't remember the exact context, but they were talking about the confirmation. But at the end, he had some line to the effect that I don't want to be governed by anyone, which I thought was an absolutely fantastic line. Steve, for my question for you is, would you explain a little bit how Biden says he's going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts, but yet no one below 400,000 will have their income go up? I assume this has to do with sort of a donut hole kind of thing on payroll taxes, but I'm not really sure, and how he manages to make that happen, where eliminates the tax cuts, but our taxes.
The answer is I don't know. I mean, I can't figure out what what that means. I mean, we gave the average family about $2,500. If you had a couple kids, you got about a $2,500 a year tax cut, and that's a lot. I remember a year or two ago, I was walking. I was in, I think I was in Texas actually, in Houston, and I was walking on the street, and this Hispanic woman saw me, and she kind of walked up to me, and I didn't know if she was gonna hit me or what. She said, "You're the guy I see talking about economics, on TV." And I just said, "No, that wasn't me. That was someone." But she said, but she seemed nice, and I said, I could have, she said, "Are you Steve Moore?" I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, I just want to shake your hand." I said, "Oh, that's very nice." She said, I did not vote for Donald Trump, but I got a $2,000 tax cut this year, and for the first time in 3 years, I'll be able to take a vacation." And she said, "Thank Donald Trump, will you?" And the middle class benefited a lot from these policies, and they're going to be the last thing I'll say, Tom, and then I got to run. Is look, if we the thing that's so distressing about what the left wants to do. And by the way, if we're not electing Biden, we're electing the left, we're electing the mob, we're electing the teachers unions and the trial lawyers and the people who want to undermine all the progress we've made. And the thing that's really sad about this is, for me, people like, Meryl, you and me and Tom, we're not going to be hurt that much by this. I mean, we're getting up in age, we're getting a little long in the tooth. It's the who are the first people who get laid off in a recession? The poorest people do. And the people at the bottom of the income ladder are going to get flattened. Just flattened, and the middle class is going to be really, really damaged by this. Not the rich white intellectuals who are so gaga about Biden. One last thing on the way out, and then I do have to run to catch my flight, is that the Democrats have raised about 2 to 3 times more money. No one's ever seen as much money. Lord knows where all this money is coming from, but they are deluging races around the country, state legislative races. They're putting $500,000 in races that used to cost $50,000. It is incredible how much they're spending. Now, I don't have I believe it's a free country. If people want to do that, that's fine. Have you seen, Tom, one article in the last 4 months about the evils of big money in politics?
No, of course not.
Hypocrites these people are. Anyway, we're going to win. I'm confident. Tom, your responsibility, and Meryl, is to deliver Texas for us with a big win. And I think things are looking, right now in every border state, we're losing, but we're within spitting distance. And 4 years ago at this time, CNN announced 1 week before the election that Hillary Clinton had a 90% chance of winning. So I hope that cheers you all up.
Steve, we appreciate that very much. Thanks for your time. I know you're busy, and I'm glad you're busy, because I want you out there doing as much as you possibly can. But thanks for making some time for our friends at IPI. We appreciate it.
Hi, guys.
And thanks to all of you for joining us. We very much appreciate it. As I said, we've been doing these policy events all throughout the pandemic, and we plan to continue to do so, though we look forward to the day when we can do them in person again. And again, a word of thanks to our sponsors and supporters who made this possible. We very much appreciate it. The pandemic has created a challenging fundraising environment, and so we really appreciate those of you who have stepped up and helped us out. And again, if any of you would like to do so, please contact Addie Crimmins at IPI. So from all of us at IPI to all of you, we appreciate your attendance today. Thanks for joining us, and have a good rest of your day.